Al, Al Houston, our elder from our Indigenous Council, and Travis Angus. They're both our members of our Indigenous Council, our elders, who's been kind of guiding our work. And so without further ado, I will ask them to kind of get us started. Yeah.
It's a one for the money, two for the show. Oh, wrong greeting, sorry.
Wrong show.
Good morning, everyone. In my language, I say Anin, which is Ojibwe, or Tansei, which is Cree. I am originally from Manitoba, in the Sagin First Nations. I moved to Vancouver in 1991, and it's been a privilege to be here since. I fell in love with the mountains and said, this is what I want to call home. I've been in the Sunset area many times, but had to move out of the Sunset area to various other areas, but always found my way back home to the Sunset area. Currently, I'm living over by 49 and Fraser, and this, I have to say, is one of the most privileged as well as the most beautiful areas in the city to live. So I want to say welcome, okay? I'm going to just ask, no gentlemen wearing hats, awesome. Oh, hi, Javier. Everybody say hi, Javier. Okay. In my language, we always give thanks, okay? So I'm just going to raise my hands. Feel free to do so if you want as well. Creator, we come to you today with open hearts, open minds, open ears, and still we share with what we are about to learn about what is needed at South Van Neighborhood House. Creator, we thank you for the privilege to acknowledge the First Nations people of this land, this Musqueam, UBC, the Squamish, West Van, as well as the Tsleil-Waututh, North Van. It is a privilege to be able to be on this land to spread love, joy, do our work, play when we have to, and still be able to appreciate the beautiful surroundings that this side of the country has to offer. Creator, take over our meeting now, with all of us being able to pay attention with love, respect, and honor. In my language, Chimigwech. Many thanks.
Travis, Vancouver, A Jagai, Nass River, Kingola, Duwitwe. My name is Travis, English name is Travis Angus. My Nishkat name is Nias Mew. I'm a foster parent of 3 Aboriginal, beautiful Aboriginal children for about 10 years, same children. I've worked a lot of around with Vancouver, South Vancouver for many years actually. I'm here today to bring our energies together. I did want to explain the land acknowledgements as quickly as I can because Al used up so much of my time already. Land acknowledgements, when we're doing land acknowledgements, and this is something that we as a neighborhood society are trying to work through, is that when you're doing land acknowledgements, you're acknowledging the people that were here. So basically you're standing in somebody's living room already. Protocol that we have is called Call to Shore, and it's the original protocol that we would do where it's where you're knocking on the door. Our canoes would line the shores of the Vancouver area and stay out there until the people of the lands come down to the shoreline where they would take turns calling back and forth. The chiefs would stand on the bows of the canoes and the people on the shoreline would be asking, why are you here? What is your purpose? So we would have this opportunity to go back and forth to let them know that we're here for education, we're here for school, for health, for trading, for living, for even walking through their land. So that acknowledgement is something that I'm trying to build people on trying to do annually, as to be able to bring the host nations together and say, we just want to annually say that we're here. So hopefully the city would start doing something like that, because I think it's really important for that to start working out as part of the protocols. I will sing The Coast Salish Anthem. The Coast Salish Anthem, I've got permission from the George family of Burrard, Tsleil-Waututh, to use anytime that I wished. Their prayers, it was originally their prayer song that was asked by the many nations, or the many chiefs from the coastal nations to use as the anthem. So today it's known as the anthem, but it originally belongs to the Tsleil-Waututh family, the George family of Tsleil-Waututh. Oh, ye Lord, Thank you, everybody. Good morning.
And just to remind you, we're here all week. Didn't try the buffet.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Al and Travis. So now I would like to call on Liz Lohid, our CEO of the Association of Neighborhood Houses. Come.
Do we have slides, or it's just this? Just what's this one? Okay, that's good. Okay, hi everybody. Welcome. I'm really glad to be here. I've got 3 minutes, so I'm gonna say very little. But what I do want to say in the context of today is, I often ask people, what do they think neighborhood houses are? And a lot of folks will tell you, oh, they're a lot like community centers. And so I think what's really important to share for those of you who aren't very, very familiar with neighborhood houses, or maybe know them peripherally, is that the difference for neighborhood houses is that we work with our communities to co-create a vision together about what we want our neighborhoods to look like. And those communities in that co-creation process use certain principles and values, democratic principles that everybody has a place, leadership principles, so the idea that everybody has a role to play in activating that vision and its constant evolution, but also social justice, that we understand that not everybody has equal access to opportunity, and so we work to address that in the way we make space for each other in the conversations. Of course, there's lots and lots of benefits to that. The biggest benefit being that it's a proactive process. In the building of healthy communities, you're really creating that foundation for everybody to thrive. And it doesn't mean we all will all of the time, but you're always looking at how do we continue to evolve our vision of this community that we all live in a way that nurtures us all. So lots of pieces around that, like creating inclusion and belonging for people, but also just overall mental health and wellness benefits. A little bit about us as an organization, ANHBC. We've been around since the early 1890s, so almost 130 years. One of the longest serving organizations in the province. But we actually started delivering neighborhood houses, the first neighborhood house in BC, in the 1930s. And since that time, really been working sort of on a constantly evolving process of what does it mean to be neighborhood houses, and what does our work need to look like? And we've had lots of missteps along the way, but I think what we're really good at doing is understanding what those missteps are, and then working to address them. A little bit about us in terms of the numbers. We have about 650 staff across the association in many different areas, from childcare to housing to youth employment to food hubs. It really runs the gamut. And one of the biggest things that we have found ourselves doing over the last number of years in terms of that staffing is delivering childcare. A big, big need in all of our communities, not just for children, but also for families, for women, for learning. And so we have about 1,300 spaces currently of childcare and 300 in development. But also, lots and lots of connection to city priorities. We see ourselves aligned and helping to deliver on those city priorities like childcare and housing and equity, particularly in the equity space, and really also playing a role of pushing the envelope, because as neighborhood houses, we see ourselves as systems changers. And so, and we've been really fortunate to work with the city in partnership on lots of that system change work. I'm going to leave it there because I think that's all I have time for. But yeah, lots more to say about neighborhood houses.
Thank you so much, Liz. And you can see we have a very full agenda, so I will just kind of keep us rolling. So next is Mimi Rennie, our Executive Director for South Vancouver Neighborhood House.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me with the mask on? Yeah. Great. So I just wanted to do just a brief kind of thank you to an introduction before I go into anything. Is Nilda, who is our Executive Director at Marlborough Neighborhood House, if you want to say hello. And then we have Nanette Wong, who is our board chair at our neighborhood house. So thank you so much for being present. So for those that don't know me, my name is Mimi, and my last name is Rennie, and my Chinese name is Kian Foon, which basically means I smell nice and I'm beautiful. So with that said, I'm a first-generation settler. I was born in Malaysia, Kuching, and I came to Canada when I was 2 years old. And my ancestry is from China, but I found out that I have a lot of mix between Vietnamese, Filipino, and Tao. So it's been quite a journey to find out who I am. And I'm really happy to be here. I just also wanted to say that between Marpole and South Van, Zara Ismail was the original ED that had started this process in 2018, approximately. And I was the community director at the time, and I moved into the position in 2021, which I'm really happy to be. With that said, I want you to know that I'm going to be reading off my notes, because I get really nervous, and then what happens is I try to tell a joke to hopefully get you guys rallied, but in all honesty, I never tell good jokes. So my husband even said, just stick to the notes, Mimi, just stick to the notes. So anyway, let's go to our first slide. So this here is a neighborhood map of Vancouver. So we have two maps there, and according to the City of Vancouver, South Vancouver is recognized as three distinct neighborhoods: Victoria, Fraserview, Sunset, and Killarney. And so those have been lumped up as one one neighborhood. If we look on the other map, we've measured it based on community neighborhoods and their uniqueness. The other map defines South Vancouver into 12 micro neighborhoods that exist across South Vancouver. So just giving you context here. So just a few stats. According to Statistics Canada, Neighborhood Stats, South Vancouver has over 100,000 residents, which is more than the population in Nanaimo. Over 86% racialized and newcomer residents. So South Vancouver has the largest number of people whose first language is not English, and the largest racialized population across Metro Vancouver. The average number of people per household is about 4, which speaks about the multi-generational families living in homes. And we found that a lot during COVID. There were a lot of families that had young children, the parents, the grandparents, and even sometimes the great-grandparents. And I just wanted to point out some barriers which will also be fleshed out in the equity report, which include geography, transportation, walkability, fewer amenities and services, language and cultural barriers, social isolation, unemployment, and underemployment. So this is actually how our journey started. It started in 2018 with our South Vancouver Early Years Community Hub, where it was noted that Sunset location in South Vancouver had the largest number of vulnerabilities for children under 5 across Vancouver in the EDI report. And the EDI is called Early Development Index, which measures a child's development in 5 key developmental areas: physical health, social competency, emotional maturity, language, and cognitive development. So this led us to question what's going on, why, where, what data was there to help us understand the root causes of these high vulnerabilities. So we had Canada Census, we had the EDI report, sometimes we had AMSA reports. They were able to identify that we serve a highly racialized population, but we also knew that when we're working with newcomers and BIPOC populations, we also understand that there are multiple barriers that prevent people from having a sense of belonging in a community, let alone as an active citizen. We knew that to understand the truth, we needed to discover the root of the cause. So in true neighborhood house way, we leaned on our community partners. So we reached out to SFU. So we have our doctors, Meg Holden, and we have Megan Winters. And along with this SFU crew, which is Meredith, Farina, Cashlin, which are not here, and Aphrodite. And they helped us to find, compile, and analyze the data, which produced an equity report in May 2021. So I do want to say that was not a small fleet. That was incredible hard work, just because we met frequently and the commitment was needed. So, yeah. Okay, and lastly, this is my last slide, which is the strategic plan diagram. And I want you to just focus on the bottom part. Just as honestly, that's the outcome that we had come to. And knowing that we have 12 micro communities with the highest percentage of racialized families and individuals, the highest number of vulnerabilities in young children, and the need for neighborhood equity, our strategic plan was made, which focuses on reframing and digging deep about the communities in South Vancouver. We wanted to understand how to connect our neighborhoods to increase neighborhood pride. And 3, being one of the few community resources in South Van, we wanted to increase our visibility to attract people. And lastly, building sufficient and sustainable funding to serve our neighborhood. So I hope these few slides resonated for you and give you some context as we go throughout the rest of this morning. And I'd like to call on Travis Angus, who is a dear friend, and to South Vancouver, as well as to myself, who's made such an impact, as well as Al and our other Indigenous counsel, Lorelei Hawkins, have really taught us to really look at decolonization in a way that reminds us to be real and that it's not a one and done. So I invite you all to welcome Travis.
Good morning again, everybody. It's me. Thank you very much, Mimi. I wanted to talk about first, I moved around this area, I think it was back in 2018. Just prior to, actually just around the time of the COVID, the pandemic hit, I had applied for the navigation for the 10-year plan for the city of Vancouver. Which, moving from the Sunrise area to the Southland area, they figured it was a hybrid thing for me to do, so they functioned both of them for me to do at the same time. I interviewed about 80 families in each area, and I did a report on about 14 families in both areas. So the reason why I'm bringing that up is because food resources was one of the hugest ones. The influx of people, the buildings that are all going up, and the lack of parks, the lack of resources, especially around the food resources. What we lack most of through the area, this area, is walk-in clinics, daycares, parks, that are essential for a growing family. Southland is a very residential area, but it's an area that so far, believe it or not, in Vancouver is not as expensive to live in. It's still expensive, but not as expensive as downtown. But anyways, 2020, when the pandemic hit, I noticed the struggle with some of the families in my neighborhood right away, because there was parents who were out of jobs, moms had to stay home because the schools were out and the children had to be home, so somebody needed to be there to take care of them. So there was a lot of struggling because of financial situations. Everybody knows all that. So what I did was I started going through my garden and my resource. I have a pantry. I don't know if any of you have a pantry. I kept one room in my house for a pantry, which I absolutely love because I can stockpile like there's going to be a end of the world or something. So that's what my place looks like. It's like a little store in my room. So I did. What I did was I would... I talked with people from my neighborhood and found that they were having a difficult time with food resources. So what I would do is take from my garden and my pantry, put them into a bag and drop them to their doors. Wasn't as easy in my area because there's. I remembered with one family, I dropped to the front door, and the man came out and he was so angry at me. He was like, "I don't need anything from you. We don't need anything. We can get it from our temple." And it wasn't so much that I was dropping it; it was pride. We have to go over and above our pride and getting them to trust you, getting them to be there for you. I explained it wasn't a hand out, but it was a hand up. It was me helping them to stand up. That in my time, that was the only thing I could do to help, was to be able to offer that service. Huda had found out I was working this out of my home, and so they were running the food program here. And of course, this small little tiny place was resourcing so many people in our area here. So my thought was, okay, well, I can deliver them. I've got a car, I've got 3 children and nothing else to do in my life. So I started delivering from home to home. So I started finding out people in our area that were struggling. There was young adults that were taking care of ill parents, or single parent families, or elderly parents, or just people who couldn't get out, or people who were so afraid to get out because of the pandemic. So what I would do is I started getting to know people more and more. The more that I got to know them, the more that they trusted me to be able to offer them this type of service, to be able to include them on the food run. So when we resourced up to 16 families around that time, just around the summertime, and started delivering to 16 homes, to a lot of these people that really had a difficult time trying to get food resources. So we had, it took a long time to trust build with everybody. I mean, I went back to people. If people, this is my thing. If somebody doesn't say they like me, I'll follow you all over the place and ask you why you don't like me. I'm a very likable person. But anyways, so I would return because I know that that was there, but I know what pride is like because my father was a very proud man and would not allow people to help, even if we struggled with little to nothing. So I knew what that was like growing up on him, that his pride can only hold him to where he was, but we were the ones that were hurting because of his pride too. So I looked at that and thought to myself, once the men, I see them, the men that would go to work or leave the house, then I'd go drop it in the back door, and then, they didn't have to deal with anybody else. So, and eventually it was being able to get to know the community more and more, and for them to trust me that this is genuine. This is just helping you until things are. So when we continued with that, we had United Way. It was winter hit, and the resources were even limited then, especially for produce. So United Way stepped in and gift carded the families a couple of times. I worked with Julie and all of that. And so when we got the gift cards, I would drop to people that were able to. By then I was up to, I think, 23 homes. And then by then I was able to drop the gift cards off so they would do their own shopping. But most of the time I would have to go shopping for them, pick up everything that they needed with their gift cards, and then to drop everything back at their doorstep. Then after around that time, so after the winter hit, then we ended up moving over to the Langara Food Hub, which I started working with Joey, which was amazing because they would have everything packed up and ready for me to go. So I think we reached about 41 families at that time. So I deliver every Wednesday or Thursday to 41 homes in our area, which I wasn't the only one that started doing that. There was a few people that came forward and started delivering to homes, which is very essential during that time, and was very helpful, I believe, because a lot of people, it was difficult for people to even come out to stand in a lineup during that time. So, but we were grateful to offer that. My children, my biggest thing I could think about when doing all of this work was my children. I wanted them to learn what it's like to help people out, to be there when times are tough, to be there and put themselves forward to help, other than just to sit there and not do anything for the whole pandemic. In other words, I was trying to keep them busy. Oh, thank you. I did receive the Medal of Good Citizen back in 2020 for the food work that I've done during that time. So it was really, it was a huge honor. It was nominated by the South Vancouver by Mimi and Huda, and it was just such a huge honor for me because in my people, in my nation, I think I'm pretty much the first one to receive one. So it was a very big thing for me. I think it was bigger for me than my people, but I was happy with it. Okay, and I just wanted to bring up the Indigenous portion. We were grateful to be able to utilize and start bringing in the Indigenous Council, working with the council to kind of decolonize the neighborhood house from board down, being able to work so that we were able to, because I know that when we looked for permission or acknowledgement, we're always told that by the time that we've taught you it, you should be able to go through and do it yourself. So that's, and then removing in-house elders, removing things that tokenize Indigenous people. But it gives us the opportunity to start working on things that we can bring everything together so that we can serve everybody as one people. And then going across the board, my light's blinking. That makes me so nervous, but I asked for it. But I'm really grateful to be here. I was under a minute last time, yesterday. I didn't realize I was talking so much, but grateful to be here. Really look at the fact that we are still helping people up, that we still are walking to help people. And South Van has done a huge amount of work, but we're just scratching the surface. And we would really be better if we had the resources in place for it. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Travis. You couldn't even have Al as an excuse. That's why you ran longer. But thank you. It's always, a privilege to listen from you. So next in line is Joey Liu, our Food Hub manager. Joey.
Hello. Good morning, and thank you for being here. So my name is Joey Liu. I'm of Hong Kong ancestry, and my Chinese name is Liu Xingyu, which means a star that's far away. And I think that's very appropriate, romantic, but also appropriate for what I'm going to be here to talk to you about today, which is food justice and the vision for food justice in South Vancouver. We're reaching for the stars. So I'm going to read from notes, not because I'm nervous, but because I'm very passionate about this subject, and I can talk all day long about it. And I have to be reined in, apparently, to my time. So, okay. So I'm here to talk to you today about food justice in South Vancouver. I'm here to introduce the South Vancouver Community Food Hub, which is a collaboration between SVNH, United Way, and our amazing community partners in the area. It's an initiative that was created by my team and launched in 2020 to address the high level of food insecurity in South Van. Thank you. So before I came along, SVNH had been doing, really amazing food programming for over 10 years. We worked with the Greater Vancouver Food Bank to run a mobile food distribution hub for over 500 households. I believe in this room, right? In this room. So if you can imagine that kind of operation coming in every single week to support over 500 households, it was massive. And the long lineup outside as well. So we did that for about 3 years. When COVID hit, that program couldn't continue. And so SVNH, being a very nimble organization, stepped in really quickly to provide all these different temporary food programs, and started to really connect with leaders like Travis and other neighbors in the area who were doing similar kinds of work, really wanting to, support neighbors and bringing people together to do a kind of collective effort together. So, during that summer, all of this work was sort of kind of coming together, a lot of ad hoc, a lot of, I think, trying to figure things out. And by the fall of 2020, these programs, it was kind of clear that food insecurity was this huge issue that was not going away, and had, already, been something that was going on before COVID. So SVNH worked with United Way to become one of their regional community food hubs, which we are still today. And this is where my work and my team come in. So next slide, please. What that looks like today, like Travis mentioned, we are renting out of the Langara YMCA. It's a temporary lease. We've been there since end of 2020. And this is where SVNH is the hub for basically putting together tons and tons of, really healthy, culturally relevant food groceries for residents of South Van. We put the food together, we send it out to our partners at their locations so they can actually host community food distribution where people can pick up the food, but actually, have that interaction and that connection with their community. These numbers that you see here today, this is where we've grown to. We've really streamlined our operations. We're supporting just under 1,000 individuals on a weekly basis, the same folks coming in to every location. And I'm actually very amazed, but also proud of this, the fact that to date, we've provided over 27,000 hampers for the community. Thank you. Yeah, and that's thanks to, this huge collective collaboration with our community. And that's not including all the temporary programs. It was just our food hub. So, I actually want to just kind of take a second to make a distinction, I think, too, between, sort of traditional food bank models and the program that we created from the ground up. So one of the biggest things that we learned from COVID, seeing people come line up all in one location, we decided to decentralize when we started the food hub, which is why we have 6 locations. And so we actually match people in our program with looking at their addresses to see which location they're most close to so that they can actually access food closer to home. We also really strive to meet people where they're at and provide a dignified experience. So that might include, minimizing the lineups, providing more choice for people, accommodating dietary and cultural diets when we can, providing language support, things like that. And the biggest thing I would say is also the relationship building. So really building trust. Our hampers have labels with that family's name on it every single week, so they know it's for them, and they know all the details on there. And we learn the whole situation. So someone on our team, Joy, who's our community food navigator, she can actually refer people to either SVNH's holistic programs or other programs in the area, so that it's really about that hand up beyond food. I would say, next slide, please. One of our biggest successes today when we celebrate is when people can exit the program because they've found work, because they received the right kind of support, so that they can, get back on their own feet and become self-sufficient again. And a lot of the times too, we have folks who come back as volunteers, or we see them, as leaders in the community, really supporting each other. And we actually see that in our program too. People, when they're in our program, they talk to each other, they try to help each other find work, things like that. Another huge success is, honestly, I'm so grateful for the groundwork that was laid before my team came in. All these different programs, all these different connections with, what Travis was describing earlier, it really built this foundation of really strong connected partners. So today we have over 10 partners, actually more than that, and they include our local churches, Family Place, the BC Housing, YWCA, and also partners. A lot of these partners aren't food organizations, but they're stepping up with us, and also other food organizations who aren't local, such as City Reach, Pacific Immigrant Resources Society, and ReFood. And so, we scaled up very quickly, basically, flying the plane as we were building it. And we became full within 5 months in 2021. We have a long wait list, we still do. And what we've seen is that, the wait list continues. The high demand for food continues. And I think it actually, last summer, we saw that it became a lot worse with, inflation and all these rising food costs. People were very anxious, and more requests were coming in. In terms of, what Mimi was describing earlier around the inequities and how that plays with food, because we have very few food assets, this really impacts people's ability to access food. So one study that we did with SFU, a scholar in 2020, we found that that South Vancouver is actually Vancouver's about 16% of the total population. But we only have 8% of its total food assets, which include, grocery stores, gardens, programs like food support programs, things like that. And most of these 8% of food assets are concentrated within two major intersections. So that's around Fraser and Victoria. The rest are kind of left to their own devices. And so another study showed that Victoria-Fraser View actually ranks as the highest concern in terms of food deserts and being able to walk to a grocery store within 10 minutes. So that means that, folks who live basically anywhere south of 49th either have to own a car or, have to walk up this giant hill to access groceries, or they have to transit for long periods of time, most of the time outside of South Van too. Meanwhile, we saw actually in 2021, other food support programs began to decrease. Because a lot of resources were limited, we can't really fully support the specific needs of seniors, of unhoused people, people with mobility issues, things like that. We're also, during this time, in the last 2 years, looking for a permanent home for our food hub. Since we're on a temporary lease, the building at the YMCA is awaiting redevelopment. And so, we're trying to find it, but there's quite a lack of affordable and available space in South Van. And the last point I will make about that too is I think what we worked really hard in the last 2 years, and one of the things we've really seen is this reliance, I think, on nonprofits to fill these gaps. And so we've been filling these gaps, but we can't fill them forever. And I think we've done an amazing job, working on our short-term goal, really to provide that food access for people. Next slide, please. But right now, what we're seeing is there's a need for basically to address the root causes of food insecurity. What we want is food justice for the community. What we need is culturally appropriate food access that isn't just about meeting basic needs, but about South Vancouver's residents' right to food, and all residents. We really want to transform the community and tap into the power of food as an opportunity to increase social connection, wellness, different kinds of health, capacity building, and the health of the land. So what does food justice look like in South Vancouver? That's a great question. We're looking for people to tell us because we can't make those decisions ourselves. So what we're really trying to do now is we're starting to work with SFU again to create a community consultation and planning process that weaves the community together to develop food strategies for each unique neighborhood. We really want to figure out what roles and resources everyone can play to make this happen. It's an opportunity for expanding collaboration like it's never happened before. So really building on what we've already done with our partnerships, but actually extending it out to, health sector, business, education, and all these, basically everybody in South Vancouver. We really want input and collaboration and action to grow more local food assets, resources, programs, and partners doing the work. So sometimes in my field, when people are working in emergency response work or this kind of like food support work, a lot of people say my goal is to work myself out of a job. But for myself, I actually want to work myself into a different kind of job where I'm not doing food distribution. And I would say that South Van Neighborhood House wants to, also shift itself. Instead of leading food distribution, we really want to become the connector and the conduit for basically growing food justice in the community, and to help people make their dreams happen. We also want to do this out of a space where we can support food access, we can has a kitchen, we can really bring people together and again grow that sense of justice. So to sum it up, we're looking for support and resources to come up with a food strategy with a neighborhood plan for South Vancouver, and we want a home for food justice. Thank you.
The vision gives me goosebumps. I would like to call the next presenter from our SFU partner, Farina Fasihi, and also want to acknowledge the other partners that we have here, Megan Winters and Dr. Meg Holden. Farina, let's rock it.
Thank you all. I'm very happy to be here and pleasure to present this on behalf of our research group. So I'm going to be talking about the research project that we did in 2021. It was about social infrastructure and the unmet needs and existing gaps in South Vancouver neighborhoods. And this was a partnership with the Neighborhood House and the Urban Studies program, which I come from, and also the Health Sciences program at SFU. So starting with some definitions. Next slide, please. So what is social infrastructures? As the City of Vancouver actually defines this, social infrastructure is any place that people can gather and connect and learn and help each other. So kind of like this place that we're here right now. And then looking at what social infrastructure means for South Vancouver, we try to map all of these unmet needs and gaps in this area. And for that to happen, we had 3 different objectives. So first was to gather this data, and this wasn't easy because we had to look at text data and tables and reports from different sources within, the City of Vancouver itself, but also from the BC government, from other external sources like Van City, for example. And second, to identify the inequities that we could find in this data and in all these reports on how social infrastructure spending was happening, how South Vancouver neighborhoods, the 3 distinct neighborhoods, and Marpole would compare to the city average and other neighborhoods in the city. And the third step or objective was to validate our data with stories that we heard from the community. So we reached out to residents in South Vancouver and Marpole, and we talked to them about the data that we found and the unmet needs that they might have, and to really sort of crash test the data. So we looked at different areas, focus areas that we had for this research project, and I'm not going to focus on all of these for this presentation, just for time's sake. But just to name them, we focused on all these populations and groups within South Vancouver and Marpole that might need different or might have different sets of needs. So basically, families with children, youth, seniors and older adults, indigenous groups, recent immigrants, also LGBTQ plus people, as well as a focus on accessing healthcare and those services and mobility services within the area. So looking at spending on social infrastructure, we first looked at the City of Vancouver and how they set aside funding for social infrastructure projects throughout the city. And they have, so there is like the City of Vancouver social infrastructure grants. And there are different grant streams. We focused on these three because, data was available and reports were available for these three consistently throughout the years. So it was community services, childcare, as well as Greenest City, and they have grant programs under them as well. So, for example, community services branches out into two different grant programs: the direct social services and organizational capacity building, as well as the childcare enhancement grants and Greenest City grants as well. So looking at how these grants are allocated within the city, and this is like the organizations that apply for these grants and then receive them from the city, we see that there is a gap in the way that South Vancouver and Marpole are receiving these sort of grants, and spending is actually happening in these areas as opposed to the city average. So this is the spending per capita for each of these grant programs. For example, for direct social services, you see that there is quite a bit of difference in how Marpole and South Vancouver neighborhoods are getting these grants. As opposed to the City of Vancouver per capita, which is much higher. And this is the case for other grant programs as well that we found throughout the years of 2016 to 2020. The other funding source that the City of Vancouver has for social infrastructure is actually through development. So the more development happening in a neighborhood means that the more DCLs and CACs are being collected. So development cost levies and community amenity contributions. And those are slightly different in the way that they're collected. So DCLs are a bit more rigid in the way that they are collected, per square footage of a project, but CACs might be more flexible in terms of how they are collected. And they are there to provide these either funding or the facilities themselves for the neighborhoods. Things like parks and childcare and housing. And you can see on the right a map of all of these, some of these development projects or rezoning projects that are happening, and some of them might be in Marpole in this map. And this brings me to my next point, or the next map that I'm going to show you, which is again, funds per person or per capita from the years of 2016 to 2019. And you can see that the citywide average is around 2,500 per person. That means that a lot of development is happening, and per person, that is the amount that is being allocated. But then for South Vancouver neighborhoods, Killarney, Victoria, Fraserview, and Sunset, you see that the numbers are quite much lower than the citywide average because not a lot of development is happening. And then for Marpole, we have a higher number because quite a bit of development is happening in that area right now. So the Cambie corridor, if you see the next slide, you see all of these, like the yellow dots are all the development locations in South Vancouver and Marpole. We have two major development sites in Marpole, the Pearson Dogwood and the Cambie corridor. So that's why the per capita was much higher than the citywide average. But again, for South Vancouver, that is not the case, or wasn't the case from 2016 to 2019. Next slide. So parks projects, we looked at those as well. So this is, again, something that is funded through the development funding that comes from different projects in the city. And then those funding is actually allocated to upgrade parks or create new parks throughout the city. And this map, which is by the City of Vancouver, an annual report that they put out for DCLs, shows where these parks are, like the new parks as well as the upgrades. You see again that most of it is around the downtown area and maybe the Fairview neighborhood, but not so much in the South Vancouver neighborhoods, almost nothing in the Marpole area, which again shows a gap of how these funds are being allocated and how they are being used to create the upgrade the parks that we already have or create new ones. And we do know that we need more of these amenities, especially parks in South Vancouver neighborhoods, just because. So one of the metrics is that we know that 24% of Vancouver youth live in South Vancouver, which points to the need for these amenities, as including parks in these neighborhoods. And we know that these youth are actually active in the area in terms of how they interact with social infrastructure and how they use these amenities. So, for example, some stats from the community centers during the year 2017. We had quite a bit of youth visits, engaging in recreational activities, participating in volunteering, which shows that there is the need for more services like this, but it's just not being met, even though we have a lot of young folks living in these areas. And I want to include one of the quotes that we received from one of the residents that we engaged with, and we have we collected quite a bit of these quotes from and stories from residents of South Vancouver and Marpole. This one is really about the difference between how funds are allocated to South Vancouver and Marpole and to other parts of the city. And it's not to say that other parts of the city aren't needy or don't need these funds, but it's just to say that South Vancouver might be one of those areas that might need more attention. So I'm just going to read this. Understandably, a large part of the resources go to the downtown east side because that's a very, very needy area, and to Strathcona, but South Vancouver seems to miss the boat a lot, and there could be more, I think, on offer for people living in especially southeast. So that's the Killarney neighborhood. And I think more help available for people through the city, which points to, this good point that this resident is making, but also points to the fact that engagement with the residents is also very important to validate what you see in the reports and what you see in the data. And I'm just going to close with 4 major points that we learned in this project. First one, and maybe the most important one, being that South Vancouver is not a single neighborhood. It's 3 different neighborhoods, including Marpole, 4 different neighborhoods with very different needs. And these needs need to be recognized separately and addressed separately. And then the second thing that we identified in this research was a lack of systematic data and record keeping throughout the city, which is very hard to do. We know that local level data, city level data is almost never available. Nothing like the province or CMAs, which is the metro area. But we know that for a city like Vancouver, with all these different neighborhoods that it has and all the diverse needs that these residents may have, we do need to collect more data, and we do need to have better processes in place to keep those records and then to turn some of those reports into usable data sets so that more research can be done. And then this brings me to my third point here, and so that neighborhood houses and advocates can use this data and research to advocate for these residents. So we know that the reports are there. So for example, the annual reports, but they're not being turned into any sort of usable data and information. And then lastly, stories that we heard from residents, again, points to the importance of engagement and consulting with residents in new ways. Again, especially when you're working with data information and research like this, you need to, we identified the need to actually go out to residents and see whether this is correct, whether this is what you're feeling living your life in this area. And these stories are from the day-to-day sort of lives of these residents, so it sort of validates what we found, but also points to new sort of challenges that they might be facing that might not be evident in the research that you do just looking at reports. And I'm just going to close with this last one. If you want to see more data and numbers, you can always check out the full report. We did, again, mentioning like all those priority areas, mobility, health services, newcomer services, Indigenous people, and all of these diverse groups within the South Vancouver neighborhoods that might have very diverse needs that are not being met. You can see it on the South Vancouver Neighborhood House website and also the SFU Summit platform. And with that, I'll close with a thank you from the research group. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Farina, and our SFU team. Thank you, thank you. Next is Stephanie Sun, our second community speaker.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie San, and I am a longtime resident of South Vancouver, and even more specifically, the older part of River District. So my parents came to Canada in the 90s, fleeing from a military regime back home in Myanmar. They packed up their lives to come to Canada with nothing except with the determination towards a better life for themselves and their future children. As refugees, my parents didn't know any English or even where or how to get started. My university student dad and 3 of his friends joined an ISS of BC Welcome House for Refugees, where their mentor guided them to find jobs and a career to settle here in Vancouver. Thanks to that program, my parents were able to buy a small 2-bedroom apartment here in South Vancouver. Growing up in South Vancouver has had its challenges. I was fortunate enough to live steps away from beautiful parks and nature, having access to green spaces and public recreation. Friendly families with children populated the area, and I felt safe. I attended the closest elementary school, called David Oppenheimer Elementary. If you don't know where Oppenheimer is, it's located at the very top of Elliott Street, and I lived right below Marine Drive, which made my commute to school 45 minutes long. Since there were no buses that went up to Oppenheimer from my house, my little sister and I walked along Marine Drive Highway with cars racing past us before having to climb up Elliott Street, which back then did not have a sidewalk. Through the snow, rain, heat, and wind, we trudged up that hill to fight for our human right to basic education. Both my father and mother worked shifts from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., 30 minutes away from our elementary school. They always told me and my little sister that we were on a wait list for the fun after-school childcare program that all of our classmates were a part of. But as we grew up, we learned that the truth was quite different. My parents never actually put us on that wait list. Because childcare was so expensive, my mom had to instead beg other parents in our classes to look after us after school for a small fee. Over time, River District developed into what you know today, a vibrant community with restaurants, a supermarket, and its very own Starbucks. This newer community is valuable to its neighboring towers and proposed future of a sports field, recreation center, and schools. It boasts about its brand new shops and a variety of services, but what about the families like mine that still live in the older part of River District? Just recently, 1 bus was added to travel from Upper Marine Drive to River District. And for us, getting weekly groceries at that new supermarket would still be a 30-minute walk away. Without a car, it's impossible to access these fundamental basics for survival. And what about the seniors without transportation, or families still trying to get to school? How can we help them? By focusing on South Vancouver's need for greater infrastructure on accessible transportation, we can also assure accessible food, clothing, affordable childcare, and resources. SVNH became my second home as I started my volunteer journey here as a David Thompson secondary student. And SVNH has allowed me to flourish as a youth by building community events through the Neighborhood House Youth Initiative, fight climate change through the Green Team, and facilitate meetings as the former president of the Leo's Club of South Vancouver. I am so proud to live in a diverse part of the world where I can have different neighbors, share a community, and have the support I need for my future. To you, my story is a struggle of the inequities in South Vancouver and its potential. But to me, I use my struggles to empower myself as SVNH's current UX Marketing and Communications Coordinator and I strive to leverage my lived experiences to design diverse solutions for our families, friends, and neighbors. Do you remember earlier when I talked about that mentor from the ISS of BC? Well, that mentor was actually Lisa, a facilitator here at the presentation. She recognized my father's last name and said that the last time she saw him was on a ferry with a little baby girl, which was me. Thanks to change makers like Lisa, my dad was able to make a wonderful life for his family, and I hope that the residents of South Vancouver can have access to the same future too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It kind of revealed my age, you know. I was in the settlement sector for 27 years before I moved to South Van, and been doing like teaching monthly job search workshops. So you can just imagine how many, you know, immigrants and refugees that I have worked with. I used to say I used to be young and beautiful. Now I'm just beautiful. And I still remember talking to Stephanie's dad like it was yesterday. So anyway, our next guest is a community speaker, are the families of South Vancouver. So I would like to invite Jovel and Joyce as our next community speakers. Woo-hoo! Woo-hoo! They got the future. They got the kids.
Thank you so much. I feel comfortable when I'm holding a mic, right? So good morning, everyone. So my name is Jovel Seno, and you know what? I really love when you said that we need a good foundation in order for us to have a good city, right? So if you can see here, this is my beautiful family. So I'm a full-time mom for almost 3 years. It's my choice to be a full-time mom because I believe that in order for me to have a good foundation for my kids, I need to be there with them, right? I need to spend more time with them. I need to communicate with them every day, right? How can I do that if I'm working? So it's my choice to be a full-time mom. I really enjoy when Ate Lisa talked to me that can you share, because I really feel that I'm part of community. I've been in 10 years in Vancouver, and no one wants to hear our voice, right? So when we transfer here in Vancouver, all right, at least Lisa is here, right? So it's a good thing. So we really love to, as I'm saying, of good foundation, but it's not all inside the house. We need to go out and explore things, right? So having said that, we all around. You can find us everywhere, right? We love Killarney, we love South Hub, but the thing is, it's not, it's not enough, right? Sorry, don't get me wrong with my words. It's not enough, right? But then, if you can see, like next slide, the next slide. Yeah. If you can see here, would you agree that the most exciting and memorable day of summer after kids' school is going to water parks, to playground, right? They say, oh my goodness, I'm done for school. It's time to play outside. And having a good foundation, it's not only home, it is going outside, building their confidence, playing with other kids, right? Exploring things. But the question is, do we have it here in South Vancouver? Right? So when I'm trying to Google it last night, I'm really thinking of what to say, right? I Googled water park, South Vancouver, right? So I can't find the exact thing that I can have it here in South Vancouver, right? If you're typical parents, typical mother, you have 3 kids, right? You want to go to water park, then, you have to take bus, go to other community. Why we need to go to other community? Why not we stay here in our community? Right? Playgrounds. It's not only for kids. It's for parents, for grandparents, right? Everybody enjoy it, right? So having said that, I'm talking too much. I really want to share Joyce.
So I'm Joyce Mamariel, and I have 2 mics already. So I'm a full-time mom too of 3 kids, ages 7, 5, and 4. So we love going outdoors, and we've been here in South Vancouver since more than 10 years too. And I'm gonna talk about the schooling and transportation for the school for South Vancouver. So before we live in Kerr Street and 54th, and our catchment is Cook Elementary School. And then a year ago, we were forced to move from our home to because they're gonna rebuild the house, and so we have to find another home to rent. So we found a place here in Argyle and 47th, and unfortunately, my kids weren't able to move to Tecumseh because they have a full school capacity. So until now, my children are still in Cook Elementary School, and where I drive them to school every day and pick them up. I'm lucky that I can drive, and if I don't drive, I don't know how could I bring the 3 kids with me in the bus to go to school. And the transportation is like not for me only, but for like other parents too. There's no bus going from east to west from it's like in between 49th and Marine Drive. So we're like in the middle of 54th, and so that's another how can I say, lacking for the community of South Vancouver. And anything else?
All right, so it's my turn again. Yay. So you know what? I believe that as a parents, all of us are parents here, right? As a parents, we're going to do everything. And as a community, who is the parents? The committee is the parents, right? So I believe that you're going to do everything. We believe in you, that you're going to do what is best for our community. Who here watch Game of Thrones? Okay, Jon Snow said he have north, right? So why not we build South? A community that we can call our own, which is our South Vancouver. Thank you.
Thank you.
They're very shy people. Once they get started, they really get started. So thank you so much again, Joyce and Juvel. And our next speakers are the Youth Hood, Meredith Sones from SFU's health faculties, and our 3 beautiful youth, our future, Megan, Emily, and Lance.
I might follow your lead here, Joval, with the feel a bit like a rock star, but thanks so much, everybody. I'm very grateful to be here today as an uninvited guest on the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I'm from the Faculty of Health Sciences at SFU, and over the past couple of years, I've had the honor of being involved in a community-engaged research study here in South Vancouver called Youthhood. I'm white. I'm a white second-generation settler. Many years ago, past the threshold where I could be considered a youth. I also don't live in South Vancouver. And this is all to say that I'm very much an outsider here. And I feel very grateful to be a research ally of SVNH and be able to use my position as a researcher to elevate the voices of the residents here. So Youthhood explores how neighborhoods shape social connectedness for youth in South Vancouver. And it's one piece of the bigger puzzle that SVNH and SFU have been working on to better understand social infrastructure inequities in South Vancouver neighborhoods and the impact that it's having on residents, particularly those that are historically left out of city building, like young people. When I say social connectedness, what I'm talking about are the various ways that we connect physically and emotionally, both to each other, but also to our communities at large. There's a lot of compelling reasons why cities should and do care about social connectedness of its residents, including youth. I think everyone in this room is well aware of this, so I won't elaborate. But really, in a nutshell, social connectedness has well-established impacts on health and a whole host of other social outcomes, including community resilience, of course, which we all witnessed during the pandemic. Secondly, sorry, second here. On the other side. Even before COVID, levels of connectedness were in urban areas were sort of seen to be deteriorating and moving in the wrong direction. And that was a concern in Vancouver, as we all know, but also in South Vancouver neighborhoods specifically, where reported levels of social support and also community belonging tend to fall below city average. And the worry now, of course, is that the pandemic has made that worse, particularly for those who are already prone to social disconnection, like young people, whose rates of loneliness during the pandemic have roughly been about double the general Canadian population. Thirdly, city and community design is, of course, part of the solution, but it can also be problematic knowing that social infrastructure is not equitably distributed. And so obviously just creating more infrastructure doesn't necessarily solve the problem either, in the sense that it doesn't mean that everyone is necessarily going to use and benefit from that infrastructure. So this is just sort of one really important reason why understanding the needs and perceptions of residents and also the solutions that they want is just really important to understanding how we can address the problem. Okay. So that's ultimately the motivation behind Youthhood, using a community-engaged and participatory approach. The study engaged youth living in South Van to assess features of their neighborhood physical and social environments that impact social connectedness using a smartphone app. Secondly, they analyzed the results of those assessments and came back together to collectively analyze and prioritize the results. And then thirdly, advocate for environmental solutions that promote social connectedness in their neighborhoods with researchers and community partners, and of course, city planners. So the project came to life thanks to grants from SSHRC and SFU's Community Engaged Research Initiative, and also the support of just some truly fantastic community and partners, including, of course, SVNH, also City Hive, John Oliver Secondary School, Clarny Community Center, and a host of others. But the real brains behind this project are our co-investigators, who are 42 youth who call South Vancouver home. They've been involved in every step of the research process, all the way from study design and data collection through to analysis, interpretation, and of course, translating that into solutions for neighborhood improvement. So they were kept very busy. I'm not going to go into our study methods today, but of course, if anyone wants to chat about that, I'm happy to. Essentially, youth completed the first phase of the project through the fall and winter of 2021, and that involved walking around their neighborhoods using a tool called the Discovery tool to capture at least 5 pictures of features in their neighborhood that either help or hinder their connectedness. And the app actually geocodes the photos and asks users to describe why they took the photo and rate it as good or bad for the community. So what that allows us to do is to sort of delineate between assets and barriers and also their locations. Then last spring, we held a design jam where youth came back together to collectively review their results, analyze and prioritize issues to address, and then brainstorm solutions for neighborhood improvement. And we also kicked off that event with a civic education session led by City Hive, which was really to sort of prepare youth to give them more insight into how cities work, how decisions are made, and how urban planning can shape their connectedness. So then in the final and third phase of the study, we invited youth to step up as Youthhood ambassadors. This was a leadership role where a small subset of the youth in the study were able to share results of the project with planners on behalf of everyone in the study and community leaders at a forum hosted by SVNH this past September. If anyone was there, I think it's fair to say that these guys really brought down the house. And lucky for us, they're back for round 2. So we're really grateful to have 3 of our Youthhood ambassadors here on a school day, mind you, to share their findings with you. So Emily, Megan, and Lance, they've been involved in the study since the beginning. And I'm just so proud of all their hard work and commitment to this project. And they're stepping up again here today. So I'm excited to pass it off to them. And they're going to share some of the key findings from the research. I can do the slides if you want to stand. Wait, I'll do the slides.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. So I'll be starting with talking about the positive aspects of South Vancouver. My name is Emily, and I'm a local high school student from David Thompson Secondary. I'll be beginning with talking about all the good things about South Vancouver. The first key message from our research is that there's a lot to love about South Vancouver. From our cultural diversity to our vibrant main streets, we feel South Vancouver has a lot to offer when it comes to supporting social connectedness for youth. During our neighborhood assessments, we mostly captured things in our environment that are good for our connectedness as opposed to bad. This shows that while our communities are under-resourced compared to other parts of the city, we see the best in our neighborhoods and feel there are many assets here to recognize and build upon. Here is a closer look at the neighborhood features that youth identified as helping us connect, engage, and feel at home in our communities. As you might expect, some of the top assets identified by youth included foods and cafes, parks and green spaces, shopping streets, and public institutions like schools and libraries. But it's important to consider not only what we captured, but why. Culture and diversity was a common theme in the assets we identified. For example, we found that food and cafes are a major source of connection and belonging for our youth in South Vancouver. But as one youth described in the picture on the left of a bubble tea shop on Kingsway, they're more than just spaces to gather. Food helps us connect to our culture and explore other cultures in the community. Shopping streets like Fraser and Victoria Drive were also identified by youth as assets for social connectedness thanks to their vibrance and diversity. Another major asset for social connectedness identified by youth were parks and green spaces. Collectively, we found that the best parks for social connectedness are the ones that are well maintained and offer something for everyone, including sports facilities, large open spaces to either gather or retreat, and basic facilities like seating, bathrooms, and water fountains. But smaller neighborhood green spaces also matter to our connectedness. Like a youth described in the picture of a small parklet on Elliott Street on the right. Several youth highlighted the importance of libraries for their connectedness and bringing a diversity of people together in a shared space. But libraries and other spaces don't just support social interaction. It's about emotional connections too. Many youth describe the memories they have attached to places in the neighborhood, which give us a sense of safety and belonging. As you can see, our research sheds light about things in our neighborhoods that are good for our connectedness, and why. These are things that we need to celebrate and grow. But as you'll learn next, living in South Vancouver presents major barriers to social connectedness for youth as well. Now on to Megan.
Hi everyone, my name is Megan. I live in the South Vancouver area and I go to David Thompson and I really like dad jokes. For example, what do you call a fish with a bow tie? Sophisticated. Okay, I'm ready. Our second key finding is that active transportation is a major source of connectedness for youth in South Van. By active transportation, I'm talking about things like walking, biking, skateboarding, and also transit. We do these things for fun with friends, but also as a way of, as function, as a way to get around to the places and spaces where we connect with our friends and communities. Based on our assessments, neighborhoods in South Van need more and better infrastructure to make getting around easier without a car, safer and more enjoyable, not just for youth, but for everyone. Our study found that the top social connectedness barriers for youth related to transportation are lack of infrastructure, unsafe road and sidewalk conditions, and issues with transit comfort and convenience. In our assessments, youth shared the sense of security and community they get from biking and the practical benefits of biking when they want to leave their neighborhood to hang out somewhere further away. But youth also captured barriers to biking, like the lack of space on the road and the need for more bike lanes. Worn down cyclist lanes with little protection, like in the picture on the right, can be dangerous. Similar issues were identified for pedestrian infrastructure, like the lack of sidewalk along a popular route into Memorial Park, shown on the left. We also found unsafe road and sidewalk conditions to be a barrier for people of all ages, especially older residents. Cracked roads with potholes are also serious hazards for people getting around without a car. I've witnessed my own friends have been taken out by potholes when skateboarding on the road. Me too. Lastly, our research found that youth rely heavily on transit to get around and meet up with friends, but comfort and convenience of transit are issues in South Van. Lack of transit access close to home was a barrier for some youth. We also identified bus stops as negative for our connectedness because things like crowds, litter, and people glued to their phones, like the youth described on the right about the bus stop at Victoria and 54th. Also, this bus stop is very busy with residents and students every day, yet there's no shelter or protection from weather on rainy days or sweltering summer afternoons. To address these barriers, we brainstormed solutions that explore how we can make it easier, safer, and more enjoyable for youth to get around without a car. First, the condition of sidewalks and roads need to be improved. Second, we need separated bike lanes and other measures that make it safer and more comfortable to bike, like brighter colors or to really delineate bike lanes. To make transit more convenient and comfortable, it needs to be better connected to our homes, to places where we socialize. Also, many neglected bus stops need upgrading to provide adequate space and protection from the elements. I'll now hand it over to Lance to present our final 2 key findings.
Thank you, Megan. So, hello everyone. My name is Lance. I am a grade 12 student studying at John Oliver, and I have lived in the Sunset neighborhood for 2 years. So, to address these barriers, we brainstorm solutions that explore how we can make it easier, safer, and more enjoyable for youth to get around without a car. First, wrong slide. Okay. So our third key message is that neighborhood upkeep really matters to our community connectedness. However, our study found many neighborhood spaces that are being neglected because of garbage, lack of maintenance, and vandalism. These factors make our community feel unsafe and uninviting. Our study found that the top social connectedness barriers for youth related to neighborhood upkeep are garbage in communal places such as bus stops or parks, disrepair, and vandalism. Garbage is a major barrier in using public spaces, like parks, streets, and benches, and bus stops. In the photo of Gordon Park on the left, the youth described how people will dump mattresses and other large household items next to the garbage can, and garbage is usually scattered around the park, which discourages them from wanting to be around that area. Many of the amenities in our park are old and tired and in disrepair, like the rusted swing set in Joyce Park on the left. On the right, a youth described how basketball nets missing from hoops is enough to deter them from playing at particular courts. These may seem like small things, but they represent big barriers to youth and other residents using our existing neighborhood spaces. So another barrier identified by the youth is vandalism, especially in the Joyce-Collingwood area. Multiple youth captured the house shown on the right as making the area feel neglected and unsafe. As one youth described, it makes it seem like a scary neighborhood when I know in reality it's not. If the city could find a way to do something about the property, I think it would make the neighborhood look a lot more presentable and make youth a lot more comfortable in that area. So to address these barriers, at our design jam, we brainstormed solutions on how to address neglected spaces in our neighborhoods. The top solutions that were identified by the youth were, number one, create incentives, example, money or food for residents to clean garbage and litter and form neighborhood cleanup groups. Second is to install more garbage and recycling bins and ask the city to fix unsafe infrastructure. And lastly, improve communal areas, like putting nets on basketball hoops, cutting lawns, upgrading playgrounds, and caring for gardens. So, our final key message relates to public open spaces. While we love the vibrant shopping streets of South Vancouver, we need spaces to gather off the main streets that are quiet, tucked within our neighborhoods, integrate nature and color, and offer amenities that are youth-friendly and inviting for a variety of people and interests. The youth found that our existing public spaces in South Vancouver does not support our connectedness because of, number one, poor lighting, number two, the lack of youth-oriented amenities, and number three, the noise from traffic. For example, multiple youth flagged lighting in Collingwood Park as a barrier to using the park. The youth describe how better lighting in this and other public spaces would allow kids and teenagers to feel safer there and be able to use these spaces in the evening. Also, many pockets of South Vancouver may have small parks and playgrounds for younger kids, but lack amenities and destinations for youth compared to a place like Killarney, where the community center is near the school. Noise from cars is also an issue for youth in South Van, since the majority of amenities are along main roads where there is heavy traffic, making it hard to hang out and connect with people. As one youth described 45th Avenue in Killarney, I see a lot of people that are walking alongside the street and going for a walk and talking with each other. But it's kind of annoying the fact that it also doubles as a main road, so it's quite busy and has traffic, which causes a lot of noise. So here's a look at some of the solutions that the youth brought forward in the design jam related to public space improvements. First, better lighting to make public spaces feel safer and more functional. We thought solar panels would help to illuminate public spaces using clean and sustainable energy. And also adding more color and beauty to public spaces through gardens, flowers, murals, and other art. And to give the youth opportunity in helping to beautify these spaces. Spaces need to be adaptable to a variety of interests and activities and enable youth, family, and other people to linger. This includes basic things like PED-up, person with disability friendly benches and covered or indoor areas, but also different types of facilities like water parks as well. We also really need spaces that we can retreat to, which are off the main street and away from noises and cars. Lastly, while South Van deserves flagship destinations like skate parks and pools the other parts of the city have, youth are just as excited about better using the little spaces within our neighborhood as places for connections. Now, I hand this microphone to Meredith.
Thanks so much, guys. That was awesome. Okay, so as you can see, I think their results really echo, I think, the broader literature around what we know in terms of how our neighborhood environments can support our connectedness. But I just want to quickly highlight that they also really offer specific guidance in terms of guiding action locally. So I just want to close by taking a minute just to highlight those opportunities. The first are spot improvements that can be addressed now. And so the neighborhood assessments done by the youth provide the city with really rich place-based data on a really kind of micro level within particular neighborhoods throughout South Vancouver. And I think, those are things that would otherwise come through complaints, for example. And these are relatively small things to address, like basketball nets, but they would have really, really big impact. The second is that there's also an opportunity to act on lessons learned from youthhood in neighborhood planning going forward. And so youth have provided, really concrete evidence on neighborhood-wide assets, issues, and solutions to explore. But when you actually look more deeply into the data, I think what's really interesting is that they also offer some really interesting principles in terms of guiding actually how planning is done. And those include honoring community assets, so approaching it from a place of abundance as opposed to a place of deficit. Number two is co-production. And so that really presents a new way of engagement where youth are really like directly involved as partners in crafting and implementing solutions as opposed to sort of just consulting on them. And, I would argue that that process in and of itself could really have a positive impact on their connectedness and engagement. And then lastly is intergenerational planning. And so I think there's this sort of tendency, like we feel like we need to be designing spaces exclusively for children and youth. And what I thought was so interesting was that the youth in South Van, what they're really describing is like they want spaces that are inclusive to everybody. So it's not really just about them. All through the stories that they captured, there's so much discussion of older adults, younger children. So I think the focus is a lot more about inclusivity than it is about things that are exclusively for them. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much. Something coming soon I want to highlight is that we're actually working on putting some tools together to help the city and others really explore and sort of apply lessons learned from this data. And one is a story map, which will integrate all of the photo, locational data, and narrative data from the project. And so that's something we've sort of shared in very rough form with the public space team at the city already, and something that we're looking for funding to build out further. So that's coming soon, and we're excited to keep working to really try to translate the results from the project. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Meredith and the Youthhood. You guys are our future. Lance, Emily, Megan. Now I would like to call to our senior speakers, and we have Kathy Thompson. And yes, please come forward. Yeah, and then next would be Al. Okay, but yeah.
I got it. I'm short, but I pick up.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. See, I get emotional. Isn't this a wonderful group that we have here? Your voices are being heard, and people here care and give so much. So my name is Kathy Thompson, and I'd like to thank you for this opportunity on behalf of the South Vancouver Seniors Hub. That's a lot to say, so I'm just going to refer to us as the Seniors Hub. I also have a lovely colleague here, Mandy, who is part of our council. Thank you, and she's here to support us. And look at you, Shelley, God bless you, and Huda, and all of you. You're just wonderful. So I would like to say that you can see, my name is Kathy Thompson, and I'm a proud member of the South Vancouver Seniors Hub. Oh, that's what's missing. Oh, just in case you didn't guess, I am a senior. So please be kind. Get back in there. And as I said earlier, after listening to what's going on, the actions, the listening that we're doing for our South Vancouver, what a great group to work with. I am a senior, and I live in South Vancouver, and to be honest with you, I didn't know I'd be a senior so quickly, but it happened. So for over 10 years, and this is really important, you being here is wonderful. So thank you for taking the time to come to our house to see what we have. But over 10 years, the City of Vancouver has been a constant supporter of the South Vancouver Seniors Hub, and we sincerely thank you. This funding has enabled us to deliver valuable and much-needed services to seniors who have told us that they want to be independent and active participants in their neighborhood. And we provide the programs for this to happen. And I hope you heard that we listen to our seniors. In other words, we just didn't go in a little room and make it up. We actually asked our seniors, what is it you want? And if you can imagine when you're over, well, I'm 73, but it can be a lonely life. So we want people to be active and engaged. We value the healthy and strong relations we have with the city, such as the emergency preparedness kits handed out during the heat dome, and the local community centers. We have great MOUs actually with 3 of our community centers, like-minded groups and networks such as the Metro Vancouver Cross-Cultural Seniors Network. And I'd also like to express how grateful we are to work with your Peter Brookman, the social planner policy. It's all about healthy and open relationships which are so key to the success of making things happen. This morning, I would like to address 3 items. How the Seniors Hub came about, what do we do? We got a hub now, what do we do? And why we're here today. And I cringe, but it's about funding. The Inequities that has been so evidently based, proven, and that's so where I come from. Everything before any decisions could be made, it had to be evidence based. So thanks to all of you that contributed to that. So in 19, oh God, that's me. In 2009, a report that was funded by the UBCM, and that stands for the Union of British Columbia Municipalities, which is comprised of over 1,400 elected officials from the province of British Columbia. I used to do that. And United Way called, they had a report called Sustaining Seniors Through the Neighborhood House Model, and published results stating that the fragmentation of senior services became a major concern. It ain't over to this fat lady singing, and I haven't sung yet. So, hence the South Vancouver Neighborhood House was asked to design and implement a seniors hub as a 3-year pilot project. Well, I'm very proud to say, and I mean that, we serve as the model for other neighborhood houses, locally and even internationally, in Berlin, where we were asked to share our expertise. Now, doesn't that touch your heart? That we're doing something that's good and that's needed. And now, we're in 2023, we're still going strong and even stronger, and we're enhancing programs where we can, and we're offering programs in many languages, and just recently added Vietnamese, another growing population in our neighborhood. I know that some very interesting facts were discussed and mentioned, but I think they bear mentioning again. I'd like to talk about our boundary, which is from 41st to Fraser and Main Street to Boundary Road, and is home to 100,000 people. Now, what does that mean? I can't describe it in football fields, but let me compare it to Kamloops, Nanaimo, and what was Kamloops now? And yeah, Chilliwack. So don't tell Chilliwack I forgot about them because I know you did this and you're drawing my attention, Minnie. I'll behave and I'll stick to but if I can again say 100,000 people, and we're also the most racialized area of Vancouver with 80% visible minorities, and we have the most immigrants of anywhere in Vancouver, 56% of the population. 68, doesn't that say something? 68.6% of the population have a non-English first language, and 60% of the population who are 65 and over are first-generation Canadians, of which many are considered low income. So our residents, as you all know, or we feel, are the greatest assets in South Van, and having opportunities for people to connect, engage, and lead has never been more important than it is now. Sad to say that South Vancouver has inefficient supports or social spaces available for the community to connect, engage, and thrive. It's a wide, sprawling, disconnected area. So what is it that we do at the South Vancouver Seniors Hub? Well, we work on behalf of 18,000 seniors. That's 18,000 that live in the area, and we're governed by a dedicated group of 8 senior volunteers who form the Seniors Hub. And again, Mandy, thank you so much for showing your support and being here with us today. And Shelley, and Huda. You're all just wonderful, wonderful. The council and committees organize health and wellness activities. We hold information sessions on issues affecting seniors, and we identify assets and gaps in community services. Members also link with other city-based and provincial groups to expand their impact, and that's very important. We're all about partnerships and working together. Well, we all are, but we work very closely with our partners. We're a network of partners that work collaboratively to better serve local seniors. Our goal is to support the independence and active participation of older adults in community life by building their leadership capacity, advocating for new services, and organizing programs to meet those needs. Some of our current initiatives include anti-racism dialogues and workshops, community outreach, men's peer support group, emergency preparedness, and computer training skills. The photograph on the screen shows Mandy, which is, she doesn't have, but this is our Mandy right here. And she's conducting, the intercultural wellness program. And the one on the right is our anti-racism dialogue. Thanks to the dedicated and committed staff at South Vancouver Neighborhood House, the seniors have reached and connected with over 19,000 seniors. No, I fibbed there. 1,900. I'm sorry. They only work so well, and then you can make up stories as you go along. So, that's a lot. Thank you so much, Joy. A lot. And we're keen to provide ongoing leadership and support the planning and implementation of a new weekly wellness program for Vietnamese-speaking seniors and provide increased support to the South Asian seniors' wellness. We anticipate total attendance for the year will be approximately 4,160. So we're doing our best, and we're reaching those who really need us. Given the gap in the cultural and language-specific programs for seniors, the Seniors Hub wants to address this by co-creating weekly programs designed to support vulnerable and isolated seniors to build social connections, engage in the community, improve their physical and emotional life, and have access to information and services on a regular basis. Throughout this morning, I kept hearing the word collaboration, partnerships, and working together. That's very, very important at our neighborhood house. I say ours because they're just great to work with. And finally, the reason that I'm here this morning, it's about inequity in funding, and it's evidence-based. And I have a long background that you can fight, you believe in your cause, but if you have no evidence to really solidly express why these services are needed, people care from their hearts, but you do need evidence. So as you heard earlier, we had that wonderful report by you saying that, or not by you, pardon me, but the report highlighted several inequities, and what stood out for many of us that live here was the fact that we don't have the services that most people do. And the barriers to accessing services, as you know, hinder the quality of life of residents, especially the more vulnerable populations of seniors and youth. And by the way, you youth did a great job, really wonderful job. I don't want to sound negative because I'm not really a negative person, but I'd like to emphasize that we are very pleased to see many social services receive their funding. I used to do that when I was with Terrace, and making decisions is difficult because there's so many worthy organizations. So please know we empathize with you there. But our main reason here is to bring the equity to your attention, to raise awareness, so to speak. And we're asking respectfully that when it comes to next year's budget, you'll remember these three things: that South Vans receives less per capita than the Vancouver average. So that's 11 versus 25. That's 14% inequity. And that we have an over 100,000 population in our catchment area, larger than some cities, and we have the largest multiculturalism population. So without access to services, we put South Vancouver neighborhoods at a disadvantage. We believe that the people in our neighborhood deserve more. We are seniors working for seniors. Is that for me? And in order to meet the needs, it's imperative that we continue with these and deliver programs to meet their needs. And again, ladies and gentlemen, and the City of Vancouver, not that I'm separating you, I don't want you to feel separate, but thank you. And on behalf of, I'm being cheeky, because on behalf of the South Vancouver Seniors Hub, South Vancouver Seniors Hub, thank you for this opportunity, and I mean that. And God bless all of you for doing what you do.
Thank you so much, Kathy. So now I call Al. I'll use another senior. But Al is also a member of our Neighborhood Advisory Committee. So please, Al.
First and foremost, I want to thank all the speakers for your concise reports. It's been very important to hear all this information. And, you know, when you teach us, it's important that we pay attention. So I'm not just addressing the City of Vancouver, I'm addressing this to all the residents of South Vancouver. So I raise my hand to all the speakers for their reports. I work with the NAC, which is the, okay, I kind of get this a little wrong. It's the Neighborhood Advisory Committee. but at the end you'll understand why. With the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, we kind of got together, and it's basically a group of volunteers that feel that it's time for a committee that looks at the neighborhoods, its structures, its infrastructures, its problems, and how the city can help us correct many of these problems. The youth spoke a lot about what I wanted to talk about, so I'm just going to kind of touch base quickly. We have met 3 times and did some educating of ourselves of how to put together presentations so that the city would understand where we're coming from, what we're doing, and what we're at. We did digital mapping, which was very, very interesting because it really taught me a lot of how to recognize problems by having an aerial picture to be able to explain what the problem is. Just a couple of examples. Okay, as a senior, I walked down 49 here, and when you get to Elliott, the sidewalks are so uneven because of the plants shifting the sidewalks and then, you know, cracks and such and that too. And I have done this where I'm pushing my walker and then my walker doesn't want to go, but I go over top of my walker. So, I mean, that's very dangerous, you know, and I'm sure that there's many seniors, and I'm not saying this proudly, that are older than I am, that could be very, very problematic for them. You know, injury, it's like, you know, we got to try and, you know, bring this to the attention to have it repaired, okay? Bus stops, okay? You go down Knight Street at 43rd, okay? There's your bus stop, but there's no crosswalk unless you walk down to 41st, cross over, then come back. Or go up the hill to 47, cross, and then walk back down the hill. You're gonna miss your bus because there it is, but basically with no sidewalk or no crosswalk there, the city's basically inviting us to jaywalk. That doesn't make sense. So we need to bring that kind of stuff to the city's attention, you know, and that's kind of the things we look at, you know. So it's important that the NAC does its job, okay? And I want to thank all the volunteers, 3 lovely people that I met that work with us as well too, and their concerns. You know, garbages. Have you ever seen the way the city picks up garbage? And then all of a sudden your garbage cans are strewn all over the back lane and you have to try and sort yourselves out. It's worse than a sock laundry pile, you know? So, I mean, like, we need to pay attention, and it's like we need to bring this to the city to have them recommend these garbage gentlemen that pick up the garbage. Come on, guys, give us a hand here. You found it neatly stacked the way you want it. At least try to put it back the same way. All right? So those are a couple of points that are very important that we need. You know, garbage strewed all over the laneway. What does it promote? Rats. We have a big rat population here in South Vancouver. There's enough rats out there. We don't need any more. Okay? So let's pay attention, please. All right? Further, I wanted to say about the Indigenous community. We're getting a larger population of Indigenous that are moving away from the trouble of downtown East Side. You look at the downtown East Side, and everybody says, oh, nothing but about drunk Indians. Incorrectamundo. There's probably like maybe 5% of Indigenous that are hanging around the downtown East Side. Why? Because their friends are there, and they're there to try and talk to them. We always greet each other with a smile. We're not the ones causing problems. You take a look at the population down on the downtown East Side, it's more problematic, I hate the word, non-Indigenous, for a better sake of a white community. They're down there because they're having troubles in their homes. They're stuck down there. What are we doing to help them? But let's move back to back to South Vancouver. The Indigenous are now relocating to this neighborhood, but they're just starting to understand, hey, they are welcomed in this community. So we have the Indigenous Advisory Committee that is helping South Van, as Travis mentioned, decolonize and try to look for a better way that we all can work together, okay? We are privileged when we are asked to come and say blessings at the beginning of events, meetings. We are tickled pink. Oh, okay. We are tickled pink when we are asked to participate. Why? Because the stigma of being Indigenous is erasing here in the South Van community, and we feel more welcomed. So I raise my hand to say thank you on behalf of the Indigenous. I'm going to go further and talk about the LGBTQ. Okay, as all you know, it's lesbian, gay. I hate it. I call it alphabet soup. Okay. There's many of us that don't want to go into the West End any longer. We're removing ourselves from the bars. So what do? We have created an LGBTQ presence here, and we can stand up in our own neighborhood, raise our hands and say, we're not going anywhere, we are here. So it's important that we feel welcome. We're now holding events. We held a barbecue last summer, great success. With the Indigenous Advisory Council, our success last year, we held the first All Nations gathering. That was successful. We had so many cultures represented, not just Indigenous, but all cultures, your culture, and we learned from one another. One of the proud things that I can personally say that I brought in is when I introduced myself earlier, I said hello in my own language and taught you how to say it. And that's what we try to encourage one another to do, is let's learn your culture. I'll teach you mine. Please, I want to learn yours as well, okay? And finally, I just want to say, belonging to South Van, I've met 4 people that really, I have to raise my heart and hands to, okay? Mimi, I call her Mimi the Marvelous, because she is exactly that, She's always got that heart ready, and how can we help, We've got Huda the heroic, Huda steps up and, she asks us, would you be interested to help? That takes a lot of courage, Huda, and by getting us involved, we feel privileged to say, we can't say no. You know us, we can't say no, okay? Shelley the sensational, Seriously, it's like when you got people like this, Shelley's always coming at us and saying, it's like, Al, she said today, I always appreciate when you're here. And it's like, if I can be there, I can't say no, I'll be there. Because this is my community as well too. You're all part of my community, and I want to be a part of it with you. And finally, Lisa the lovable. The girl with the biggest heart that wants to make sure we all work together and guides us all together. So ladies and gentlemen, with that said, I thank you for listening. And since we're almost done, I'm going to just say this right now. Let's all take a stretch break. Stand up, come on, everybody stretch. And while you're at it, say hello to your neighbor. Offer a hug and say, hey, we are community. Thank you. Did I go over? Did I go over? Oh, okay.
So what I will do is, since we're starting, we're standing anyway. Can we ask the city staff and the city directors who are present in the room, just to recognize you? I didn't get the name. I remember Kate and Kristen, and then Mary Claire, I know from Settlement World. And then I can't remember the names of those two lovely people. But can you please stand up? Thank you so much for coming this morning. But we still have like two presentations, and we saved the best for last. We saved the last for best. Anyway, I'm always transforming things. Mimi, maybe you can also come at the same time so we can be faster here. So our last presentation is the Reframing South Vancouver initiative, which is the response of South Vancouver Neighborhood House in addressing the inequities. In the last couple of hours, you have been listening to and you have a good picture of the residents of South Van, and you can see it being 80% racialized population, 50% of them newcomers to Canada. So you can just imagine the settlement challenges that they have to go through, and the high children household, low income. So this all contribute to them so busy, just basically making ends meet, having 2-3 jobs, and raising their children. And Also, we come from a space where, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that I am an immigrant here as well. I came to Canada as a foreign domestic worker or live-in caregiver program in its later name. I speak Tagalog, and the settlement challenges that someone like, for example, Stephanie's father coming here as a refugee, you can just imagine that the engagement experience that we have from municipal government or any government where we come from is, it's riddled with feeling unsafe and feeling like we could not engage because it's such a big power play. And with the last president in the Philippines, for example, you complain, you can get, right? So that's the frame of reference of a lot of citizens in South Vancouver. So they do not necessarily know to engage in the systems where things can get resolved by being by complaining. It's like a complaint-driven process. We just don't know whether or not we have the right. Can we do that? There's a lot of insecurities and questions. So that's a picture of a lot of the residents here in South Vancouver. So the Reframing South Vancouver initiative, basically, it's a 3 years project where we have the first phase was asset mapping, and then the second phase was like needs mapping. And again, people have already mentioned that there was already a lot of problem, but the pandemic really highlighted it and really shown what is the barriers to engagement in South Vancouver, which is language, lack of understanding of the systems. When the time where you could only engage through Zoom and other visual platform, they don't have computer literacy nor digital access. All of these things kind of just come into play where the engagement is such an issue. So we just finished the third phase of the Reframing South Vancouver initiative, and we are in our last phase. And we had formed these wonderful neighborhood advisory committees. And this is the lovely picture where even the City of Vancouver social planners and planners, engineers came to be one of our trainers. And we are very, very appreciative of that. And we graduated about how many? 30-something people, 37 people. And we have formed 6 neighborhood advisory committees within the boundaries of South Vancouver catchment. So we want to really utilize and ask you to look at our, findings and our authentic engagement, and look at the innovative strategies that we have in order to really engage the citizens and leverage the connections of South Vancouver through our programming, through our partners. Like really, aside from South Vancouver Family Place, we're like the only gig in town. Well, and thank you so much for the Vancouver Public Libraries, because we kind of extend there. We're like always banging at their door and say, can we, community engage when we show up? And so it's a very important. Let me see. I'm so conscious of our time here. So with the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, we have found a way to really train our citizens in order to be the change maker, in order to really co-create the table and decide what they want to happen in their neighborhoods. We can go to the mural now. Just because I want to highlight to you this document, which basically summarize our work in the Reframing South Vancouver initiative, the key learnings and recommendations. And when I have said that we have really find ways to be innovative in our engagement, and I want to invite you to kind of utilize the findings that we have. So these are the what happened in the first phase, where we have done so many engagements under the restriction of the pandemic. We have engaged over 500 people in a very short, short time. And then in the phase 2, when the world opens up, and we really figured out that the residents, the citizens, they really want to convene in person. And so we were very nimble in creating opportunities, and this is what we have done. Like, each circle is like a workshop, an event, with the culmination of the community forum last September. So our engagement has been so robust, and people really ask questions and find out, and was so feeling like they are finally part of what's going on in their community, and they're not in the margins where they don't necessarily know what's going on. And so they were very thankful to know what are the big issues and how it actually affects their lives. And that really gave us a good foundation to establish our neighborhood advisory committees, where we're looking at their micro neighborhoods and how they can affect change. And part of the training that we're doing with the neighborhood advisory committee is also looking at, okay, we can do neighborhood small grant. What do you need? We'll connect you. So we have been really a trainer, conduit of opportunities. And so as I've mentioned, we've been really capitalizing on the partnerships of our different programs, seniors program, community programs, our food hub programs, whatever we need, whatever our neighborhood advisory committees ask, we say, I think we can kind of sort it out. Let me, So we have as I said, on the first phase we have engaged over 500. On the second phase we have engaged over 1,000 residents, and with the neighborhood advisory committee members, our work is just continuing, and yet we're so conscious that this is our last year. Right, we finished the project in March 31 of next year. So we really want to continue the work that that we are doing. I think. Okay, I will stop for now, and I will pass on to Mimi.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Thank you. I'm gonna go here. So the end is near, and thank you so much. And again, thank you so much for being present, those that have come from the city and represented the city, and being such amazing to just sit here and be present with us. It means a lot to us, and we're very, very thankful. And thank you to Nadia, who has really made it to make sure that everybody comes together. So we don't take this lightly, hence we jam-packed everything we could, because we know your time is precious. So we, again, really appreciate that. So just gonna, again, read from my notes. And you've heard a lot of asks, you've heard a lot of things that show the evidence about South Vancouver. And I hope that resonated for you, and I hope that's giving you thoughts towards this. So I just wanted to invite you to just be present with us as we talk about where we want to move forward. And this is an invitation to transfer these conversations into action, and perhaps we may need to table them for more concrete plans. But this work is indeed a representation of neighborhood houses. We ask for you to reflect on these asks, knowing that our aim is not coming from a place of one and done. As our Indigenous leaders have taught us, the people that have come today are meant to be here today. So however that you chose to be here today, there's a reason why you're here today, and we thank you for that. So number one, SVNH has done 80% of the work. We've generated a community commitment. We want to have the opportunity to have a neighborhood action plan, highlighting that other neighborhoods have also been given the opportunity to roll out neighborhood action plans. How do we get that same commitment at South Van? Second, to have the neighborhood action plan under the motto of sustainability and equity. Is this funding going to affect other neighborhood houses that their funding allotments? Is there a budget that includes participatory budget model where neighborhoods are based on equity grounds? 3, to review what has already been generated. So the work, as you can see, we've talked and talked and we've talked and over-talked and we've done all these different ways to really connect. But one thing that I can say, we're doing things differently and we want to make sure that we're engaging differently. How can we use what we've learned to actually make it sustainable so the people can be heard? And lastly, is to commit to educating the City of Vancouver Council about South Vancouver needs regarding the development of a neighborhood action plan. The work has been done. We want the municipal commitment to follow through. Admittedly, we are nervous about this because sometimes it gets viewed as a one and done. And then sometimes it comes across as there's a lack of seriousness of the South Vancouver neighborhood. And we want to continue finding those missing population groups to fill that engagement gap. Although it may come across as daunting, a large task, we see this as an inspiration to pursue this, and we look forward to this continued partnership. And we thank you again for being part of this. Thank you. So, last thing, I know everyone's ready to go because I have to pee, but, but the first thing I want to acknowledge here is our reframing team. So, thank you. Great work. So, I mean, there's so many people to thank, but you all know that you're here for a reason, and thank you very much.